complained multiple number of times during the formative assessment that this studying online was increasing their stress levels. They were feeling very stressed. So we used Sheldon-Cohen scale to assess their stress scores in a gap of 3 months. We also taught them progressive muscle relaxation, which they had to practice daily, but their stress scores were not decreased in the
That's what I was noticing. So their stress levels, their reported stress levels,
was more
down.
The perceived stress scores were more.
Yes, but their marks went up.
Yes, their marks went up with passage of time.
It would be very interesting to see if next year, when they're realizing that their marks are going up, that they're getting better, that actually their stress levels then go down. So
yes,
it would
be
fascinating to
this was
see
sudden also, so for them also.
So look, we have to move on, but I hope we might come back and discuss some of the others.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so I understand that our next speaker is not here just at this moment, but we have another item to slip in, and we have a contribution from Malawi, which Neil Turner is going to present, because we couldn't have our speakers from Malawi, but really nice to have that contribution from Southern Africa. So I will hand over to Neil, who will introduce and speak you through it. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Helen, can you just make sure you're muted? And that's great. So we were very keen to have something from Africa, if possible. And both Liz and Helen and I know Malawi very well. And Emma Thompson has recorded a short talk to present it. We're just going to test now whether the audio comes through on it, but if not, I can speak to it. Malawi, of course, is one of those centers with very little in the way of electronic resource, and some of that will come through. Let's just see if we can hear the audio. It doesn't look as if it is coming through, is it? So just a very short background to the College of Medicine in Malawi. It's relatively recent, established 1991. And although originally it was aimed at training doctors, it now has faculties that train a whole lot of paramedical professions, as shown here. Some of these additional aspects set up with help from Scottish universities in particular. They were faced, of course, with this challenge, as everyone else was. Actually, the students were all at home when this first happened, and not with mobile devices. Many of them only have phones, and some of them didn't even have that, though some of them have since been able to be loaned devices and get some free internet access, which has made an enormous difference. So they had 8 weeks of remote online teaching, which took a while to set up. And then they came back and had an extended term where the final year students had 4 weeks of face-to-face teaching as well, followed by exams, which have just happened now. Now, Malawi doesn't really have the ability to mount complex video-based exams online, but they were able to set up some video locally and to use some of their space to see a few patients and some actors in a spaced environment. And it was felt safe for the students who were back to do this because they were on the wards anyway already. And while Malawi had a real problem with getting PPE early on, this was resolved, able to get the students to attend these very widely spaced OSCEs with full equipment, as you can see. And this was all obtained by external donation. The other thing was that these exams were taking place in October in Malawi, and this made this extremely hot. Long cases ran pretty well. They used patients that were in the hospital anyway. They picked patients without particular significant comorbidities. Short cases were more complicated, obviously, because of the number you wouldn't see. And it ended up really having to minimize the number of stations that the students could be tested on, even with the use of actors who signed disclaimers about their health and so on, but were paid. Use of mannequins, well, the mannequins are very limited, and actually that wasn't very successful. Asking, for instance, a student to examine the groin on a mannequin that was really made for catheterization was not very realistic and not very helpful. But as I mentioned, they were able to play 1 or 2 videos and get the students to discuss them, which is really getting a little bit like the Viva or long case scenario again. This all took much longer than usual. And like so many of the adjustments we've made, it was a real burden on staff time. The venue was good, but it had to take place over 2 days because of this distancing, even with only 100 students. So the challenges were really replicating examination skills, the long days of exams and the overheating. And I just mentioned that the only things that were done online in this case were time-limited exams, and just because of the connectivity, it was really actually pretty difficult to do these exams very reliably. But a fantastic achievement actually to get through it, and congratulations to Emma and all of the colleagues there. I don't know if Nyango Wakandawi is on the conversation today. He may be able to add a comment. He is the Dean and he was hoping to join this morning. How do I stop screen sharing? There I go. So that's just a perspective from far away.
That was really interesting. Thank you, Neil. And I'm not sure if we do have the Dean of College of Medicine Malawi. No, we don't think we do. But if he comes along later, maybe he could contribute. Do we have Dr. Nassif with us?
I think we don't have him yet.
Is Ali?
The other speaker.
I'm not hearing Ali.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me. No. Can you hear me now?
So
that's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's fine. So Mr. Nassif isn't here yet, but we have Mr. Ahmed Hashim, who is in the next group of speakers from the University of Karbala in Iraq. And I think we'll extend him a warm welcome to talk about what they have been doing. And I believe that Dr. Hashim is one of the 2 sort of leading experts in assessments in Iraq.
That's great.
Dr. Hashim.
Hi,
I'll
everybody. It's really a privilege to be here. Okay.
Over to you, Dr. Hashim.
Yes, I'll put your slides up, Dr. Hashim. Sorry, 1 minute.
Okay.
There
I cannot see it until now. Okay.
You see your slides now?
Yes. You can start
Perfect.
with the first one.
Okay.
Of course, I'm Dr. Ahmed Hashim from the University of Karbala, College of Medicine. I am the head of the pharmacology department. I have a PhD in pharmacology. Okay, I think this is the second one. Can you start with the first slide, please? This is the second slide. Okay, so our assessment in this era, in the COVID-19 era, was really difficult, but we tried to cope with all the challenges as far as we can do this. I need the first slide, Dr. Mehdi, if you can. So we.
This is the first slide we have here, Dr. Hashim. Is this your first slide? No.
Yes. Yes, this is the first slide. Yes, please.
Right. Thank you.
Can you go? Okay. So our assessment was, as you know, we have the formative assessment. I want to stress the importance of formative assessment in this era. It's always overlooked, but really it's a very effective tool for learning and also for assessing. We have a weekly test as a low stake formative assessment in order to engage the student. You know, when you have an e-learning, it's very difficult to engage the student. So by making a regular test, which is low stake, we have seen that it will make the students very engaged. And also we have, I think it's an advantage. We follow the problem-based learning sessions. We have 2 sessions each week. And the good thing about it, it's a small group teaching. So we have a problem with the internet connectivity, but when you have a small group, this will overcome this challenge. So we have like a Viva with the students using the Zoom, using the FCC, any platform or any application. And it was really fantastic. We have a very good interaction with our students. So this is a continuous assessment throughout the year. Every week we have this. For the high stake examination, well, let's start with the written one. Of course, we have, it is basically, we have an online, it was not open book examination, and we have a problem with the internet connectivity. It was composed of MCQs, but it was like a 100 MCQ, a mixture of best answer and matching, extended matching. Of course, we have a blueprint, all the other criteria of excellence, of assessment, we have to try to keep it. But we have also, proctoring was not possible with software because we have internet issue. This is the problem. But the student have to open the camera at the start of the exam to show their pictures and IDs, and then they are told that they may be accessed through the exam to ensure that they are there, or there are no, some cheating. So we have this problem with the exam security because of the internet issue. Next, Dr. Ali. For the clinical skill examination, we didn't have any real clinical setting training this year. It was cut because of the COVID-19. So everything went to like a virtual, through online. Mostly we have some materials. It's like a session. It's like a Viva with the student. Each mentor have a certain group of students, like 10 to 15, and multimedia things. We used it like photos, videos, simulation. The mentor will act like for history taking, like he will act as a patient. And also, but mainly the main attribute were tested is clinical reasoning and critical thinking. I don't think signs and symptoms, it was really assessed well. And this was also reflected in the exam, because the exam it was like a virtual OSCE. We divided, it was different rooms. Every room have 1 or 2 assessors, mostly 2, and the student will go from one room to another. We have a case-based discussion. We have some history taking through simulation, and also some photos and multimedia to assess the ability of the student for like picking the signs and symptoms. The challenges, the most important challenges is the validity of our exams. Does it really valid? Does it examine what it should examine? This is a big question. I think we have to do some studies and compare it with a cohort from the last year, and maybe next year we have to do it. Exam security, proctoring, the internet connectivity was a big issue for us. But for the next year, can I have for the next year, we are going back to the normal clinical setting. We are going to have a clinical skill lab with, we will provide our students with PPEs. We divide it for small groups. And in order to compensate for this burden, the students of the last year, 6th year, they will aid in the skill lab for their younger student peers. They will go on for training. Our written exam, as you can see, it will be in the halls. but with physical distancing, with PPEs, and also we have some plans now for also small group teaching in the hospital with PPEs. So I think we have to try it, because going in virtual environment, I think it will not be the solution. It's going to this problem will last. It will not be. I think it will last not so soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hashim. That was a fantastic overview of what you're doing now, a critique of what you're doing now, and thoughts for the future. Very, very rich. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll come back and tease out some of that thinking later. I'm wondering now if we have Mr. Nassif here. He's arrived, Ali. Yep. So that's fantastic. Yes. Thank you very much. We're going to hear from Mr. Ahmed Nassif about the postgraduate plans and experience from the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Welcome. It's great to have you here. We look forward to what you've got to say. And I think Ali has his slides.
Well, Mr. Nassif has been disconnected from this. So right. We'll bring in Dr. Madhuri from ESIC Medical College, Hyderabad, whose medical school is part of a group of medical schools. And hopefully she'll be able to give us an overview of what's happening there.
Thank you very much.
Madhuri, please come in.
A very good morning to all. In fact, it's, I should say good afternoon here in India. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It's really a nice platform to share our opinions and views about the assessment, particularly during this critical time of COVID-19 pandemic. And we are all literally on our toes right now in the institutes, in the hospitals, for teaching, for research, and various categories. So without wasting much time, I would just like to present give a small presentation about the process of assessment that we have done in our institute from my department. I'm the professor and head of the Department of Physiology at ESIC Medical College in Hyderabad. And yes, I'm also very happy to be on this platform today because we have a very close association with the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Dr. Neil Turner was here, Liz Grant, Dr. Ali. So we have had very close association. How we started off was we started our teaching process in the month of April this year. We started it online, and then soon we realized that we had to do some kind of an assessment online so as to know how best the students were able to understand our teaching process and so on. And then well in advance, we created a schedule for our assessment in the form of small tests. So they were just for half an hour, 1 hour. And then we gave them MCQs. We gave them some figures for labeling. Then in order to make it more interesting and involving from the student side, we started giving them some crosswords, jumbled words, and so on, which would, attract them and get involved themselves into the assessment process. So, of course, there were several concerns during this entire process of assessment because in India, there were a lot of connectivity issues in various parts of the country because we had students from all over the country, and that was one of the issues which the students had raised. And then we grouped those students into another small group and gave the assessment again so that they would do it on a later date. So basically, we had our various platforms for assessment. So we used our Google Classrooms. We had our WebEx for close interaction with the students. And luckily for us, we had physiology-specific LT platform. So this was created by one of the pioneers in physiology research instruments, that is AD Instruments, and they had given it to us, and it was really a boon for us during this lockdown period and this ongoing COVID pandemic period, where we were able to design our assessments. They gave us a platform and we were able to design our assessments and put all our questions and different types of assessments on it. And the students really enjoyed their assessment on this platform, since we were able to give them a variety of questions in a variety of formats on a single platform. So it had MCQs, we could give them flow charts, diagrams for labeling, and then the interesting point was it had checkpoints. So unless and until the student would answer a particular question, he will not be able to move forward. So that was one of the interesting aspects of this. And then we also had some short and long answer questions on it, 1 or 2, to make it very short during every assessment. And then we told the students that you give us mainly the key points. You need not write essays and long pages together, but just we should be able to see the key points so that we know that you have understood the topic. So that was one of the areas that we had adopted. And so all these were formative assessments, which were short, which were for about 1 hour maximum. And then we started giving then we gave the summative assessment, where we actually wanted to mimic the university examination. Because in the university examination, they had to write long sheets of answers and then submit to the university. And then we did not want our students to lose that habit of writing. Then we started giving them the question similar to the university pattern, and then asked them to write it and scan it and upload it on the Google Classrooms. And we would correct it and give it back to them. Now, we had to clarify their doubts. That was one of the important aspects of this. So once they scanned their questions and we corrected them, and then we had to give them an instant feedback so that they would go back to their textbooks and read about it and then improve their learning. So we had a tele-mentoring session with them. Right from the beginning, we started this tele-mentoring program where a small group of students would be attached to a particular faculty. And then we would interact with them personally, one-on-one, discuss what were the problems faced during this online teaching program and assessment. And we would clarify all their doubts and ask them to read further. So this is how we have done in our institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Madhuri. Again, quite a different angle, slightly different approach, plenty of things to think about. But I'm not going to ask any questions at the moment because we've got another speaker, I hope, Professor Sharifpour from Iran. Is he here? She here? Ali is...
Professor Sharifpour isn't logged in. He sent his slides. So, and Iran has connectivity issues. So I'm just wondering if there's been a problem connecting in.
Okay, should we...
I have his slides. I have his slides. Would you, I think we could spend maybe a minute just going over his slides just to grasp what's going on there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I'll take that privilege myself, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Can you see anything coming up? Sorry, I'll try again. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Coming? It's coming? Yes, it's there. Thank you.
So this presentation was put in by Mr. Muslimi on behalf of Professor Irani Khan and Ehsan Sharifpour, who said he would be here, but like I've said, I think there are connectivity issues that might be stopping him from coming here. So he says in his presentation that his system was more inclined towards summative assessment, which limited the presence of students. It was due to the virtual holding of most classes, and it was difficult to have a continuous formative continuous formative assessment. So they feel that there has been a sort of gradual improvement in the process. It is thought to be better. The important processes, as I suppose anywhere else in the world, haven't been completed yet. the training facilities and spaces aren't fully adapted. And I suppose that's a universal issue and an issue that we might all have to face up to in the future as we adapt to the ongoing COVID-19 situation. So they have advised that a suitable, purposeful, logical, strategic plan for education is conducted based on capabilities, needs, and objectives, and to upgrade educational spaces and facilities. Now, that is a capacity challenge, isn't it? It's a resource challenge. And to design and implement a summative assessment step by step, along with the final evaluation. So I'll close that there, and we'll check if Mr. Nasif has been able to join us. So we'll bring Mr. Nasif in. Ahmed, are you here?
Hello, Ali.
If you could please, yeah, perfect. If you please put your camera on, it's a huge privilege to invite Ahmed Nasif, who is the Deputy Convener of Examinations of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Now, the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh is one of a host of institutions in the city of Edinburgh in Scotland, such as you have the college itself, but the Royal College of Physicians, of which Professor Neil Turner is an integral part, and the University of Edinburgh. I'd like to add, actually, because of the multitude of institutions in Edinburgh and the worldwide brand of Edinburgh as an institution that provides qualifications that are valid and accredited for a global audience, there can often be a bit of overlap. So ESIC Medical School has had just as much a relationship with the University of Edinburgh as much as the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. So Ahmed, welcome. And you have found yourself in a very interesting situation where you have ran the MRCS exam, which is the member of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. It is a worldwide brand in terms of exams, like the MRCP is. And I believe that you have recently concluded 2 lots of exams, one in Edinburgh and one in Sheffield. Bring you in to tell us about what you felt unique compared to the previous system and what it was now.
Well, thank you, Ali. My apologies to yourself and your guests and audience for being late, but I've only just received the link now, so please do forgive me.
My fault, sorry.
I have missed the what I'm sure must have been a very rich discussion as to what's happening in the world of education and assessment since the beginning of COVID, which has thrown a very interesting twist to the world of medical education and assessment. Yeah, you're right. We in Edinburgh ran the MRCS OSCE exam earlier on this month. We've done it in Edinburgh, Sheffield, and in Buckingham as well. Well, as you know, the MRCS is an intercollegiate endeavor, and there had to be intercollegiate agreement as well as GMC sanctioning of the, I wouldn't say the modified exam, but the changes that had to take place to accommodate the new rules of engagement in the world of COVID, social distancing, the personal safety, and more importantly, the patient safety, and all of those attending the exams safety. So the number of stations was reduced from the usual 18 stations to 13 stations. There had to be a compromise, a measured compromise, I must add, in a way that obviously wouldn't affect the reliability and the integrity of the exam, that would satisfy the GMC and reassure patients that the product or those who are passing this exam are as comparable and as worthy as those who will pass the MRCS, who passed the MRCS previously and who continue to pass the MRCS after COVID era when we come out of COVID. So that was the first thing that had to be a sort of reduction in the number of stations. And then the conduct of the exam felt different as well. And I will give you one example, like physical examination stations. For example, as you are aware that there are several physical examination stations in the MRCS exam, and in these, when we've usually relied on either simulated patients or real patients, in this diet. It was all about candidates describing the method of physical examination rather than examining on a model or a mannequin or something along those lines. It was you telling the assessor how I would examine a knee or how I would examine a hip. You could, of course, argue as to the validity of that station, but I think this is something for a different discussion. And it will, of course, be interesting to see what the psychometricians and the statisticians would feel or would tell us about the reliability of these stations. Procedural skill stations were also reduced in line. Anatomy and relied on photographs mainly. Then communication skill stations were run observing the social distancing rules. And for that matter, rather than the venue accommodating 5-6 stations, because you had to social distance examiners, actors, candidates, and so on, the venue, whichever area you are using, could only accommodate 2 or 3 stations. I think it felt different for all involved. I hope. And obviously feedback is going to be very important. I was going to say, I hope that candidates felt that they were going through as credible and as a robust exam as their predecessors and as the people who are going to follow their suit, because I think this is very important. This is an exam, the customer of which is the candidate, and they should feel that they are passing on merit rather than just because it's become a reduced exam in a sense. And I certainly hope that the data that will follow will tell us that this was a worthy endeavor and will continue to be so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nassif. That was very interesting because we've all heard little snippets about what's happening in the postgraduate world. So to actually hear it, and of course the MRCS is very dependent on interaction between doctor and patient. So it's very interesting to hear how the college has been working around the issues. I wonder now if we have our, I presume that Professor Sharifpour he's not come. And really, in the interest of time, we I think need to move on to our next set of abstracts. But I do hope we'll keep coming back to pick up those points, Mr. Nassif, and also from our other speakers. So please please be here, and there may be some chat as well. People putting questions into the chat, because the talks so far have been incredibly stimulating and informative. So let's do justice to them by putting in some chat as we hear some other talks as well. So at this point, we're really focusing on online written assessment. And the next speaker is from India again, and this is Dr. Ashwini Mahaduli from Rishikesh, talking about assessment of research projects. So I think, yes, we have Dr. Ashwini, thank you very much. And does Ali have the slides?
I do. I'm bringing it up.
Great.
I thought I had it. I've got her presentation here. I'll just bring it up.
Great. So just when the slides show Dr. Mahaduli, it's over to you. We really look forward to what you have to say. Welcome.
Excuse me, sorry, there's been a small delay here. No, I have your slides, Dr. Mahaduli. Don't worry. Oh, there you go. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So yes, warm greetings from All India Institute of Medical Sciences.
We can't
And
hear you.
Wait, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're positioned closely enough to the microphone.
Hello.
You're coming and going, so I'm not sure if it's your position. Could you maybe sit closer to the microphone?
Yes, yes.
Try again.
And try again?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, that's that. I think. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. So I am here to talk about the challenges we had with the student research project. So I am assistant professor in the Department of Physiology in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Rishikesh in India. And the next slide, please. So next slide. So after the lockdown was announced in March 2020, we had challenges in the timely assessments of the student research project. And the collection was data was the major challenge, as a lack of expertise of using the Google Forms or online forms was not there with the students. So we trained the students through online tutorials with various apps and helped them to collect the data of their project. Writing part of the research proposal was another probing challenge, and it was because of the lack of the proper timely interaction with the supervisors and the delay in the response time of the supervisors, because they were busy with the official assignments, and at that time there were COVID duties and so on. So we had allotted small groups to each supervisors of 3 to 4 students for ease of communication between them. Many of the students who could not go to the collection of data had to switch to the writing of review of articles, review of literature. And that was like lack of motivation, because Fleming has described that there are type of learners like WARC model. We know that there are visual, auditory, reading, writing, kinesthetic type of learners, and students are a mixed bag of those learners. So lack of motivation was another challenge to write a review, and continuous reminders were sent by the supervisors to overcome this challenge. Another major challenge was with the supervisors had a tough time with the new norm of online assessment and teaching. But sometimes the trial and error is the best trial, I think, and that's a learning curve. So what did we do? Next slide, please. Next slide, sir. How did we assess? Yeah. How did we assess the research projects? Our basic aim was to sensitize the first year of MBBS students about what is research. So we had a group of 34 students in the first year of MBBS with the Department of Physiology, and we prepared a checklist as such, like the research projects, whether the research protocol is in structured format and intelligibly written, it had appropriate and critical content, they are having relevant references attached in the quoted in the article, and whether well in time they had interaction with their supervisors before the submission. Out of these 34 students, 9 could make a complete project, and they could complete it on time, and they could reach to the stage of publication. So I think that was quite a good number that we could achieve to reach at the end of the research project. So this is all we could do for the student research project in the period of lockdown and COVID time. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahaduli. That's a very interesting point about how to be able to communicate with students at a distance. And we found the same problem. The things that would normally be shared and motivating and directing with our students when we're with them all the time, you put that distance in, and those subliminal messages just don't get across so easily. The professionalization of our students becomes quite a problem, whereas it was happening much more naturally when they were with their tutors and with clinicians and even with one another. I think the conversations that students have with one another helps them grow, develop and learn. And we've lost all that. So some really clear messages there. Thank you very much. So let's move on now to Professor Maria Minerva Kalimag. This speaker comes from Manila in the Philippines, and again it's about research, so presenting a research project online. Do we have Professor Kalimag here?
She's put her presentation up, Helen, so she's here.
So she's here. I never know whether it's a speaker or you, Ali. so great. Welcome. Over to you.
Hello, good evening. So let me start my presentation by saying that epidemiology and biostatistics are difficult to teach in medical school, and as it stands at the threshold of enhanced higher education curricula to meet global standards, this paper contributes to the ongoing discussion on reforms in higher education by clarifying the important role of e-portfolios in technology-enhanced formative and summative assessment of authentic tasks in undergraduate medical education. Good morning. This is Professor Dr. Maria Minerva Picalimag sharing with you how we utilized a technology-enhanced product, process, and performance-based e-portfolio assessment of authentic tasks for an OBE course in clinical epidemiology among third-year medical students. Anchored on a team-based collaborative learning model, the students were ushered into the course through a lecture on research management entitled Digital Workflow in Research to prime them about the deliverables expected from the course. They were then assigned a case in a journal article to appraise, and their authentic tasks included: 1, formulating a clinical question based on the PICO approach, searching the literature deductively in PubMed clinical queries using the PICO, applying the evidence-based test for relevance, validity, and applicability of the assigned journal article to the case with emphasis on the trifecta of EBM, that is, published literature plus clinical judgment plus patient values. Utilizing an online EBM calculator to compute for the relevant outcome measures, writing the EBM critical appraisal topic in Word format with a table of contents formatted using MS Word, sharing their output using MS PowerPoint in a webinar oral presentation, applying the Vancouver referencing style to the retrieved journal article using the Mendeley add-in feature of MS Word, creating a visual abstract of assigned journal article for posting on Twitter, and reflecting on their learning experience. An explicit focus on the achievement of expected outputs with assigned grade points engendered constructive alignment through the use of analytic rubrics that help to communicate high expectations. An additional task was to create COVID IEC lay infographics in different Philippine-based languages for posting on Facebook. One administrative challenge was how to curate and archive the submissions of the students into e-portfolios. This was solved by giving specific instructions about specific naming convention for all the files submitted, so the files can be neatly organized when they are downloaded by bulk. Given the affordances of e-learning technologies and e-learning ecologies, these COVID times provided an opportune time to use e-portfolios as an assessment best suited for evaluating how learners communicate, think critically, solve problems, make decisions, work collaboratively, and do other real-life skills needed to cope with the demands of the 21st century global healthcare workplace. The role of reflective learning in a constructivist approach is emphasized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kalamag. That's very interesting, turning a task into an online task and adding some more bits to it through requesting infograms and such things from the students. We might get on to e-portfolios later. Hang on to that thought. It sounded like that's what you wished for your students, but e-portfolios are quite complicated, aren't they, in their own selves? So we move on to the last speaker in this group, who is Dr. Manjunath Nagaraja from Mysore in India, talking about student navigated assessment. Sounds fascinating. Over to you. Do you have your talk? Ali's doing it. Okay.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Greetings of the day. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to share our experiences with the community of practice, which helps in mutual enrichment. We did an experiment called a student navigated assessment. We gave this term because the ownership of this assessment lies with the students themselves rather than with the teacher. Next slide, please. This is from the city in southern part of India, Mysore, from a government medical college, which is almost 100 years old. So what we did, the student navigated assessment, SNA has had two components. The component one was the student prepares a portfolio of learning. That means the classes attended, online classes attended in the public health or community medicine, as it is called here, and also the self-directed learning done during 3 months of the COVID lockdown period from May to July end. And they need to write a reflection on each topic that they learn. And the interesting component of this is there is a partnership between the student and one person chosen from the family. It may be the parent, it may be the brother, it may be the friend, or any member of the family. They will act as either observer or a monitor or a mentor, depending upon their capability. If there is a healthcare worker, they are mentors. If there is just a person who is not well versed in medical field, they are just observers or monitors. So component 2 was the students are made into small batches, and then few questions, 5 questions belonging to higher order cognitive domain was given, which was to be solved and submitted through open book examination. So they could use the book and other resources for finding answers. The above two components were assessed using a rubric, analytical rubric, and feedback is given by the faculty, and that is a very important component. Next slide, please. Sir, can you move the slide, please? Dr. Ali? Yeah. What worked well, many parents felt very happy to be involved as most of them were free during the lockdown period. The difficult part was only 40% of the students did it effectively, but I'm optimistic that it will improve because many students expressed their inability to understand what we were trying to do and identify a person from the family to help them out. So what is the advice that we would like to offer to others is a collaborative assessment with emphasis on self-assessment. See, the emphasis is on self-assessment with an observer from the family, with subsequent feedback from the faculty helps in extraordinary circumstances like COVID-19. Validity is a thing which needs to be ascertained, validity and reliability as well. So we have developed a rubric which has 3 components: assessment by the student himself or herself, one component, and assessment by the observer or monitor, and assessment by the teacher. So this analytical rubric is being validated for construct and content validity. Some afterthoughts on SNA are, it is not a supplant, it is only formative assessment, and it will supplement the traditional assessment in settings with low technology literacy and support. And transfer of ownership to students may reinforce the values of honesty and trust which are the basic tenets of healthcare providers, and adding fourth P, that is parent to the three Ps, that is preceptor, patient, and care, to learning as well as assessment. And probably we need to have a new paradigm in assessment, with self-assessment being the central theme in changing times and trying circumstances like COVID-19. And we could also find some good evidences, like a paper by Boyd and et al. Regarding the importance and the validity of self-assessment in healthcare professional education. That is from our side. Thank you very much.
Really interesting. Thank you very much. Very different. And raising quite a few questions again in my mind. I hope we get back to talking about those. But first, let me just check. Are we expecting Dr. Bibi Aliyah, who was going to speak to us from Peshawar, Pakistan? Yes?
I have actually sent out messages, but it doesn't appear that Dr. Alia's on the line. I think this is, in a sense, reflective of one of the challenges of online education, which is a digital divide across the world, a digital divide with people's own resources. So, Helen, over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to first of all ask Neil Turner to give a little reflection on what he's been hearing so far, and then we'll open it. Ali, yes?
I think we have Dr. Alia on the line, after all. She's going by another name, Alia Arif. Welcome, Dr. Alia. We'll provide you with co-hosting and bring you in.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Alia.
Hello.
Dr. Alia, bring the slides on. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. And welcome from Peshawar. Welcome to you. I mean, you're based in Peshawar.
Yes, yes. I'm Dr. Alia from Rahman Medical College, Peshawar, Pakistan. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Community Health Sciences, but being a scholar of medical health education, I am also working with the DME department. Like all other medical institutions, during the COVID era, we have opted for online teaching through Moodle. After the teaching has been done by the end of the May, then we opted for the assessment. Can you please move to the yes? Then by the end of the June, we started for the end of the session exams. That is basically the pre-professional exams in our medical colleges. The Department of Medical Education has given the table of specification to every department to develop the MCQs and SEQs. And these MCQs and SEQs will be based on the same pattern as given by the university professional exams. Then the senior faculty members gave these MCQs and SEQs to the respected year chairs of every preclinical and clinical years. They compiled the whole paper, and that proposed paper was given back to the respective head of the departments to check the face validity of that paper. Then the approved papers by the respective head of the departments were given to the exam section of the DME to be uploaded on the Moodle on the exam date. For checking purpose, keys and rubrics from the respective departments were sent to the Department of Medical Education. For the purpose to prevent cheating, the MCQs and SEQs were reshuffled for every student. And every 10 students were proctored by the one invigilator, that is the faculty member. But what problems we have faced for these online assessments, that there was a connectivity issue. There is a problem with the completion of paper because many students have not that speed of typing. There was an element of cheating we have seen during proctoring. And after that exam analysis, we don't find it as effective as face-to-face exam for assessing students' learning. But thank you. After that time, we had a very good time in September and October. So we planned for the online OSCEs and Vivas, and it goes very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we found you amongst our audience to present that, because I think it is really important to face up to the problems, and in some ways it's easy to change things to use technology, but we have got to accept that there are some serious disadvantages. And when you say the exam analysis demonstrated it was not as valid, in what way do you mean not as valid?
I've used this word as it is not as effective because of that cheating problem,
Yeah.
because of that cheating problem.
That's what I thought you meant. I just wanted to clarify. And you didn't actually say what kind of cheating you uncovered. Could you say a little bit more about that?
That we found that in groups the student have copy pasted the same answering, especially in case of the short essays and short answer questions.
Yes, and that was even despite having videos on them.
Yes.
So you actually saw them copy and paste, or when you?
No, after checking the papers, we came to know after.
Yes. And so I suppose the other thing to ask is, had you given them, is it routine in Peshawar to give them quite a lot of training on academic integrity?
Yes, we do have sessions with them.
Okay, and have you had a chance to ask your students afterwards why they did this?
The answer was the same from all the students, that because of the stress due to the COVID, they were not able to study.
Do you think that is the reason, or do you think it was that it was opportunistic? So if even if we took students in normal times where they were studying well.
I think it's not opportunistic. It was a little, I can give them that favor, that because each family has someone to be suffered because of COVID.
Okay, so you really think it was because of poor studying? That's interesting, and something to really think about. Thank you very much, Dr. Alia, very much. So we have come to the end of our speakers, and I think we are going to have Professor Neil Turner just give us a few reflections, and then we'll open it to the floor for questions. So please be thinking about what questions you would like to ask.
I'd also request the floor, if anybody on the floor. If
Thanks, Helen. So I was just really reflecting on the things that we have heard this morning, and some of the things in the chat as well. And I think, and just one of the things that clearly everyone is desperate to do, I'm picking up, is that wherever possible, we want to use a modified form of the exams we know that are quality tested and we're confident about. Although, of course, by running them in a spaced format, people have been coming up with some really real issues, like where we're not assessing so many cases. We can't be as confident about the reliability of the results, probably, if we're doing that. And because of the mix of things we're doing, there may be one or two things that we're really seriously under testing compared to the way we used to do it before. And there was a nice bit in the chat where people are making the best plans they possibly can, but you have to make 2 or if not 3 plans, because by the time the exam comes along, the COVID situation may have changed. And we're, at the moment in the UK, there's enormous anxiety because we seem to be well into now the upstroke of our second wave, and we're predicting enormous pressure on hospitals in December, January, and possibly into February, which is when many of our students sit their finals. So in the chat, there've been a number of questions about which of the non-face-to-face techniques can we use, which are the most reliable. And we've heard some lovely accounts of going back to what was certainly a major part of our exams in Edinburgh in the 1700s, which is the viva. So you get a student, you present a student with a case, and you ask them to talk through it. Or in a more modern form, you show them a video maybe, or some photographs, and you get them to talk through it, which you can do remotely if you have to. One of the advantages of these live formats, even when they're not based on clinical, even if you're talking about physiology, is that it makes it much harder to cheat. Really, it's really very hard to cheat in an online format where the examiners may adjust their questions in response to your answers. Even if you have an earpiece in, it's very difficult to convincingly respond to that. Our disadvantage from the teacher side is that these forms of assessment are very time consuming, far more time consuming than the methods we used before. And they're not real. So the other aspect of assessment, which we've had a little bit about today, but it might be more interesting to hear some things coming out, is as a substitute for being able to watch the student on selected patients in a room, using the workplace as the place to do the assessments. And we've all been doing this, particularly in postgraduate education, for quite a long time now. But those assessments have challenges. For one thing, if you have a student on your team for a while, you're very reluctant to fail them and tell them they're useless, because it makes them less useful on your team, it breaks the relationship and so on. And if they're rotating fast through you, you don't feel you know them very reliably. Again, we've heard some nice accounts of how to assemble online portfolios from that kind of assessment. There's a third thing, which a real challenge with that kind of assessment is that it requires clinicians in the busy clinical environment, possibly during a COVID epidemic, to take time out to do assessment as well as work. So it's difficult to get enough cases together. One of the things that we have kind of heard at home, filming an interaction. Anna, you show us how, we've had it before, haven't we? Show me how you would pack a nose but use a gourd. Show me how you would examine your sister's ankle. This kind of thing. We haven't heard very much of the possibility of students doing videos of them doing things in the clinical environment and then showing it to the teachers later. And I do wonder whether there's scope for that. There are all sorts of permissions issues, but it is the kind of thing which is done in, for instance, general practice postgraduate education here in the UK. We're doing everything we can to use our traditional formats, but we want to know which are the safest, best, most pragmatic approaches if we can't do that. And I'm going to stop there and leave it open. I really would like, though, to thank everyone for their fantastic different perspectives on the imaginative and different ways that people are approaching these problems with lots of locally variable circumstances like connectivity issues and so on, which inevitably color what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Do you have any questions
Thank you.
Speakers who have already been? Any questions, Helen and Neil, for the speakers? And I wonder if people had any questions from the audience as well. And if they do, we'd really like them to come on camera. So we have a few people coming on camera here.
So Mr. Nassif has his hand up, so maybe we should start there.
Brilliant. Mr. Nassif, you can unmute yourself.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Ali. Thank you, Professor Cameron and Professor Turner. It's really a question to Professor Turner and Professor Cameron and the audience as well. We've heard quite a lot about reliability and validity, and I wonder what your views are with regard to raising pass marks in national and career limiting exams to make up for what we perceive as compromised reliability of the COVID modified exams. Would that reassure us And what would be the impact of that on, well, reassure us, the public, regulators, etc. And what would be the impact of raising the pass mark on candidates?
Could I respond first, and then we'll see. Love to hear what other people say as well. But I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't give a blanket answer to that, Mr. Nassif, because I think all the time when you're estimating a pass score, you have to go down to every question and think, what should the pass score be for this question in this context, given the learners and given how they have been taught? So, for example, we converted our teaching period 2, our term 2 assessment last year in undergraduates. So normally we would have an exam in the classroom with single best answer questions and short answer questions. Because of our students being scattered across the world last term, we gave an open book exam with short answer questions, but we gave them 72 hours to complete the exam. So when we went through every question, we said to ourselves, what is the estimated pass score of the just competent student answering this short answer question, but given that they've got 72 hours in which to look up the information and address the question? So we went right down to that detail of setting the statement or the question to the standard setters. And we did not say to ourselves, should we set the standard higher? We went through every question. And some questions were more difficult, even in open book, because of their analytical requirement. And some were much easier because it was about getting information and writing it down. So that's the way I would tackle your conundrum. And I wouldn't just give a blanket answer. As it turned out, because most of our questions was about finding information the students had been taught on anyway and had notes on, but they had to apply it to a scenario, we did end up with a pass score that was higher than we would have done in a closed book, very time limited on-campus exam. But I think it's justified in the process of asking the question. Does that help?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, thank you very much. Yeah. So if I understood you correctly, Professor, it's all about addressing every single question, the reliability of every single question in its own right, rather than having a presumed pre-event pass mark that you bump up from, say, 50% to 70% to 75%.
Exactly. And not just reliability, but context is very important.
Of course.
And, you know, thinking about I was going to ask you a similar question, actually. I was going to ask you, having listened to your talk, did you find your range of marks there was a frame shift so that all the marks were higher in your stations, particularly the examination, the description of physical examination? Whereas I would think your marks would be bumped up, and I would expect the standard setters to expect a higher pass score for that.
Very interesting, Professor, that I thought before the exam, I thought that the marks in this particular station were going to be lower, because oftentimes I find myself performing a particular task or procedure much better than my ability to describe the procedure to somebody else. But that was quite the opposite in the MRCS exam in this particular station. Candidates were able to verbalize the technique. Perhaps many of them wouldn't have been able to demonstrate it in the same degree of sort of accuracy and proficiency as they described it, and that resulted in higher marks. So yes, absolutely, the marks were much higher, and I wonder what the pass mark, what the percentage of those candidates who passed the exam would be on this occasion. That would be interesting to know.
I think with this whole assessment thing, you've got to think and think and think hard about what the purpose of it and what you're doing and the way the students prepare, because in your MRCS, you had presumably told the candidates that they would have to describe how they would physically examine. So had they taken you at the time of your MRCS and asked you to describe it, you might have been tongue-tied because you were used to doing it, and you might have scored lowly. And so we would have reduced the pass score. But your candidates had been told that they would have to describe it. So they would have practiced it. And so you've got to think of context again, really important. I remember, you know, this is just some experience, but relevant. A couple of years ago, I was involved in running some practice multiple mini interviews for students who might come to the university, to the medical school. This was 2 or 3 years ago, and the students had to sit back to back with a volunteer, and the students or potential students had to explain to the volunteer how to do a complex diagram, different shapes, sizes and colors. They were very bad at it. And so our estimated pass score should have been quite low. They'd never done it before. The following year, I was asked to help at the same practice run, and clearly information about that station had leaked far and wide, and all the potential candidates were excellent at it. So they had practice, they knew roughly how to go about that task. So again and again, it's the context. Do you think they would? So we should have set a much higher pass score second time, because it was out there. They knew how to practice it. It was no longer a surprise. So that's how I think it through.
Thank you.
And we had some very interesting and relevant comments in the chat about that as well, about physical examination. And I've just lost who wrote it now, but I had noted it, that one of our contributors is saying that, oh, here we are, Dr. Neela Vadia, saying you could take a video of the clinical skills being done and submit that. And so we could assess our students or our postgraduate trainees on them doing these skills on other people. And again, I'd like to throw in a reflection on what we're hearing, and particularly from the MRCS. They were talking about the difficulty of having a lot of candidates in a limited space, and that's something we're all finding. But maybe we should focus our on-campus assessments on the skills and tasks that cannot be done anywhere else. And I did wonder whether the college had thought about doing online history taking, because you can manage it. There are difficulties, but you can manage it, and keep the physical examination and the practical skills for the on-campus, where you can manage a very few candidates for a very few stations in the space.
Well, it's interesting you're asking this question, Professor, because there are ongoing discussions with regard to holding the entire exam online, following on from what happened in October, from what happened early on this month, and the adoption of a style of asking about how to perform rather than actually performing it. People are now talking about piloting an MRCS exam totally online, and I think there will be a pilot sometime in November. So yes, I think that these ideas and thoughts are coming to practice now. As to what regulators and others are going to feel about it, I'm not entirely certain. And this is why I said psychometricians will be, their views and their analysis will be very interesting to hear and read in due course.
And indeed, we might get good reliability between markers, but it's not valid because it's not actually assessing the right things that will predict how people will do in real clinical practice. So that predictive validity will only play out in time. Once all those people you've passed at the last sitting, Ahmed, will they be good surgeons? We will have to see.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Dr. Padmini Venkataramani has made a point about not being able to video in wards. And I'd like to invite her to say a bit more. And then I think Dr. or Professor Malik also wants to speak. So one and then the other.
Thank you very much. We are a private institution and we depend on the government hospital for the students to go and practice. So there the top priority is confidentiality of the patient. So they do not allow us to take any videos or photographs in the wards. So what we do is we get them to practice on mannequins and they take skills videos of simple skills and then they video it and then they send it to us in the e-portfolio and then we call them for a feedback.
And does that take quite a lot of organising? Because certainly in our medical school at the moment, our students are not allowed to wander through our rooms like they used to. They're not allowed to just go into the clinical skills as they used to. So it takes quite a lot of managing.
Yeah, currently the number of cases are rising, but prior to that, we had a little flattening of the curve. At that time, the students were there with us, and we used to have year 5 and year 3 going side by side, but at that time, we had only 1 year going with us. So it was possible to do that.
And do you think, you and others, Dr. Padmini, that rules may change about taking photographs or videos in the clinical setting? I mean, it's completely forbidden at the moment. I'm not saying it should be a free-for-all, but we do need to find ways to validly assess students and trainees. So do you think there might be a change in, or at least an enabling of the ethical, overcoming the ethical issues?
I don't really foresee that in the near future. So we have to go on with the same thing. I mean, I don't think they'll allow us to take videos unless we have our own hospital. And that's going to take a long time.
Yeah, yes. So it does depend if patients are prepared for the teaching aspects as well. So yes. Dr. Malik, I think, wanted to come in and speak.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. We were talking about videos. Now, actually, we started teaching online without thinking how we are going to assess them later. It was just an emergency situation, and we, from let's say face-to-face, we changed. In our institution, we had 1 day of workshop of training the staff how to teach online, and we just started teaching online without thinking how we are going to assess later. But anyway, we worked on that, and it was a formative clinical assessment. What we used was the Google Forms for answers and videos and pictures. So using the Zoom, we showed them some videos or pictures and asked the questions, spontaneous questions, and they had to write their answer on the Google Sheet and submit it immediately to avoid any cheating. So that was sort of a modified, but it was a formative assessment. It was not a summative assessment. And it worked to some extent. The second was that we asked them to make videos at home, of course, with permission and the consent, and many of them were actually very clever. They made videos without showing the face. I mean, of course, there were some limitations like doing knee jerk or things like that. And then we had 2 examiners looking at those videos and giving an assessment. But the interesting part was that we discussed these videos online with all the students there, all the peers there, and giving feedback and students commenting on that. So that really helped. That really helped, that students commenting
Oh, we've lost you, Malachi.
and the lecture. Sorry.
We lost you momentarily, but I think we got most of.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you. I think
Right.
we've got
So,
most of your
yeah.
message. Thank you very much, and a very helpful tip about just cutting off the head of your simulated patient. Very good. And another reason,
the picture, not the patient.
Another reason to live in extended families as well, in order to have people to help with your learning. So I just want to pull in one comment that I've had sent to me, I don't think to everyone, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Salim Ismail to speak. He's raised his hand. So I just wanted to draw in a comment from Shah Wasim, talking about self-directed learning and open book exams, and how both of these could help develop the professionalization of the student, and also reduce cheating and help students understand it's up to them to work within a moral code, to take responsibility for their learning, and to see cheating as really only cheating themselves. So these are good points that I just want to share with everybody. And then let me ask Dr. Salim Ismail to speak, and then Maria Minerva. Dr. Salim Ismail?
He's on.
Would you like to come on video, Dr. Salim Ismail, and speak to us?
He's there, but not yet.
I am on the video.
Ah, great.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk. I'm working in College of Medicine, National University in Oman. In fact, we tried many methods of assessment for our student during the last year and this year. And in my opinion, we find that structured Viva is the most reliable one and the most valid one. As Professor Ahmed Asif said, it is seeing the student in front of you, interacting with the student, seeing the body language, everything, and they try to explain how to do the examination of the chest, how to do the examination. I am pediatrician, how to do the examination, and commenting, asking questions, even I show them some X-ray if one is available, and so on. So, and then we assess him as a whole, about 10 minutes for each scenario, clinical scenario. I found it the most reliable. And there is no teaching in this one. Otherwise, I share with all my colleagues that the cheating is the most important part of the online assessment, as well as the internet problem. Regarding the video, what I used, start doing, I asked the student to make video with the little children, like developmental assessment, walking, talking, and the relative or neighbor or something, and we see it, and we reflection on this and give feedback about what is correct and what's not correct. Also, as you mentioned earlier, communication skill is very important. History taking from simulator, from relative, and from myself, taking history about any topic, that's very useful way of assessment, as well as counseling relative for a particular giving task of communication, like how to counsel a mother with febrile convulsion, like, for example. And this is, I find it very valid and very useful. So the student make the video, give it to us, we review it and discuss with the whole group of students and everybody, and we ask them to redo it again in the correct way. That's the, using some video from YouTube, I make it silent and I start commenting myself what is the good practice, what is the correct, and what is the incorrect one, which is very, very good. The other thing which is we noticed recently from our exam, that whatever we do, they are cheating. We're proctoring by the camera and everything. And as one of my colleagues mentioned about hiding the head of them. We cannot see what they are doing. And I understand from the last exam, as Dr. Ali commented, they are cheating by copy and paste. The same sentence, every student doing it with comma and semicolon and dot. And the question, which is not received answer, all of them, they kept in blank, nothing written on that. My worry here, the student now try to learn how to cheat rather than to keep the knowledge and retaining the knowledge. And this is very dangerous at the end of this. So we need to avoid this thing in the future to ensure that the student learning and answering rather than learning the method of teaching and lack of knowledge, and they are not able to answer simple question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I do like your comment, Dr. Salim, about if only they wouldn't spend so long learning to cheat, because actually if they use that energy and time to learn medicine, they would pass no trouble at all. And I think more and more people are beginning to see the value of structured vivas that are clinically relevant. What would be really interesting is to then check whether the results from those structured vivas actually match something like 360-degree evaluation of your students in the clinical setting, in the wards, because we can improve reliability, but maybe not validity. So something to think about. We're running out of time, and we have two other people who would like to contribute. Is there time, Ali? Can I ask two other? So Dr. Maria Minerva and then Dr. Jarina Begum would both like to speak, and we may then, I think, have to stop at that point.
Ask Liz to come in at that point.
Yeah, quite, of course. I meant we'd have to stop this conversation. Dr. Minerva?
So with regards to cheating, perhaps we can, we do ask them to actually sign a declaration of compliance, telling them that about the school penalties for actually plagiarizing and so on. And of course, it helps now that we have technology to actually teach them and lead them to sites like Plagiarism Detector, so that when they have short answers, they can actually input it and then they submit a, what do you call this? Actually the certificate of uniqueness of whatever they submitted. Because I'm sure many of them would rather just, copy and paste from the internet and then put it as a short answer. And then another one would just copy the same paragraph. So if they put it on a plagiarism detector that is free online, and then they submit the a screenshot which says 100% unique, then that will help them also to,
it does help.
To paraphrase.
And I did wonder whether people were using, let's call it text similarity software. And we in the UK do not let our students use it before they submit work, for fear that they will just keep adapting their answers until it no longer shows a high score. So in other words, they have plagiarized, but they then manipulate the paraphrasing to yes. But we're actually training our students by showing them some of their own work through a text similarity scoring system, but then we don't let them use it at assessment time. They've got to do that better through good academic skills at the earlier stage. Can I ask Jarina Begum to come on screen and share comments, please?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Dr. Zarina. Yeah, I'm from Andhra Pradesh, state from India. I'm a professor in community medicine from James Medical College. So we have tried many methods online teaching and also assessment. For cognitive domain, we have used different quiz from Google Forms. But one interesting thing that I want to share is for short modified short answer question and modified essay questions, what we did that once at the end, one question was how much you expect the marks. Okay, so from their side, and after the exam is over, so we have shared the answer sheets to their peers. So peer assessment was also important, and they have to assess and give the marks, and also faculty. So we have assessed, and they have also assessed their peers response sheets. So that is an interesting part, because in this way we could teach them that in what are the criteria to assess their answer sheets. So this is an interesting, because students, they liked it, and other next assessments also, they want it in this way. So that's what I want to. Peer assessment will create a good impact for assessment.
Yeah,
so that was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody has mentioned peer assessment to date, so that's an interesting angle. A lot of hard work, but I have used it in postgraduate education, and do think it gives people insight into what is quality and differentiating between different qualities. So it has a lot of educational impact, I think. So at this stage,
thank you.
Can I thank the speakers very much, because I've thoroughly enjoyed the presentations today. They've been really focused, really at the heart of the problems, and they haven't shied away from sharing their own schools and postgraduate problems. So I've learned tons. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope you all have too. And I'm going to hand over now to Professor Liz Grant to bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, and for me too, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. It's almost impossible to summarize all the important messages, but the one thing that I really picked up in a lot of the conversations was the balance between trust and truth, and the fact that trust and truth are two sides of a coin. And if there is trust in teaching and trust actually in self as well, particularly from that, your last comment, Jarina, trust in self to do well, to actually invest, because this is not about one single assessment. This is about a life choice of care for others. So I do want to say thank you to all the different perspectives, the understanding that we need to be receptive to the internal challenges, being receptive to the external challenges, being receptive to, are we assessing the right thing at the right time, being receptive to changing structures, which is and being revolutionary about changing structures as we go forward, but also that importance about being about caring for ourselves and caring for the students and caring for each other as we are involved in assessment. So from the Global Health Academy and from all of us here, thank you, because we'll keep this learning together and keep, share your experiences, share your challenges, share the things that worked well and the things that didn't, because that is what makes a global community work together. Over to you, Ali.
Thank you very much, Liz. I'd like to actually know from the distinguished speakers very quickly. We've got yourself, Neil, Helen, and Ahmed on the panel, apart from our other very distinguished speakers, about the role of medical humanities, about the role of bringing in a structure at the very beginning of medical curricula on value and ethics. Where do you say this, how much of emphasis should we be putting, especially at this time, on this, when trust is a big issue at the heart of assessment? Does anyone have this? What's your perspective on that? Bringing in, if you like, a strong emphasis on values and ethics.
Ali, should we wait till the floor speaks? I have some thoughts on that, but I don't want to speak too much.
Anyone?
Can I share my thinking, Ali? I think it is incredibly important, and I think that's why I was raising it earlier about, are we teaching our students about academic integrity? And then underpinning academic integrity is our code of professional practice as medics, medical students, doctors. So, and I suppose underpinning that is our sense of humanity and our principles of humanity. So it's sort of whether or not we were going to be doctors, we should be honest and trustworthy. It's not just about being doctors, but being doctors layers on another professional code, and layering on that within the academic medics have academic integrity codes. So to me, there are these three layers. So we talk about these to our students very much. And we have, I do not like people having to sign and say, I'm honest, when they submit a piece of work, because I've just said, we accept that all humanity should be honest and trustworthy, medics especially, and then academic medics very much so. But what we have done in Edinburgh is, when students are about to sit these exams, which may be more open to academic misconduct, we give them a sheet and we remind them what academic integrity is. So it is not colluding with somebody else. It's not buying an essay or short answer questions across the internet. It's referencing all the work that you maybe use in an essay or short answer. It's not having your books open. So we actually take them through the steps of what we mean by academic integrity, and they sign them off. So by doing that, we're actually trying to be tutoring them on academic integrity rather than just signing off a declaration saying, I am honest. But we have somebody else who would like to speak, so I'd like to hear them. Dr. Neela Vaidya. So what would you like to say on this question?
Yeah, we have conducted one session on EdCom basis, that is a communication and ethics.
Yes,
can you hear
yes.
me? So in that we have shown the videos, because we have the positive as well as negative videos with us. So we have shown that, and then we have taken the discussion on that. So students were ready to react in that in a small group. So we have taken that, and then we have asked them to reflect on that also. So what they have done, they have seen that videos again and again. We have shared that on their platform, and then they have reflected. They have sent reflection, scanned the paper, and they have sent it to us. So we have checked that also. So it is a very good platform. Actually, it is not cheating and all that. We have asked them to use any other video and ask them to reflect that, use it as for the ethics and all that. So it was a very good interactive session.
And do you have scenarios on cheating? Oh, sorry, Ali.
No, sorry, Helen. No, carry on, please.
I was just going to say, do you have scenarios on cheating in your bank of scenarios?
I couldn't hear you, madam.
Do you have examples of student cheating that you use?
Yeah, so for that we have asked them. Yeah, it was understood that they may cheat us or like that. But the students were very enthusiastic, and they said, we have other sources also. Can we use it, madam? So I said, okay, you can use it when you are writing a reflection or like that. And please give the references also, what you have used. So it was just like an open book. Okay, so I insisted that don't use my video only. If you have very good videos with you, then you can use it and you can share it with other people also. So it becomes just like a resources you can share with other peer groups and all that. So I don't think it is a cheating sort of. And when we are taking the Viva and all, they are keeping their videos on. So we can easily make out whether they are cheating us or like that. And don't go sequentially. Usually we have a sequence of questions. So we can ask them abruptly the questions which we think. Otherwise we go sequentially. What is this, then this, like that. So if they have a note or like that, we can easily make out.
Thank you very much.
So that we have done during the Viva.
I'm very conscious about time, and I think I would like to close very quickly after running a poll that we ran, for which we got over 161 responses regarding how institutions have been responding to the delivery of assessment during this time of COVID-19. So the poll is going to come up. As far as I can see, the majority of you have had plans to deliver summative assessments during the COVID-19 era. You will see that your institution also, in the majority of cases, has made plans to deliver face-to-face assessments. Now, in terms of the type of assessments that you're talking about, 41% of you still plan, or 41% of the institutions from that you represent plan to have normal OSCE exams with social distancing. You also, a small proportion of you plan to have an exam with real patients. So, I mean, that's very interesting. What about face-to-face vivas? 43%. Then also a fairly big proportion of you are thinking about having virtual online vivas in line with what Dr. Maglinau proposed. Sorry, no, it was Dr. Maglinau proposing that. Work-based assessments have started coming in as well, but to a very small degree, there are other forms of assessments. Now, what would be interesting is to see what plans were implemented, or what proportion of institutions that you all represent actually implemented these plans if we were to come back, say, in April, May next year. But also see if your plans have changed for future assessments. Now, most of you are not so sure, it would appear, about the validity of this assessment. I suppose, you can't be entirely certain that these aren't valid. At the same time, you can't be certain that these are valid. What about online proctoring? Now, again, there seems to be a lot of uncertainty somewhere in the middle. People are very ambiguous about how well online proctoring works. The fairness of online assessments, again, ambiguity. So it's a very sort of, uncharted territory, of course, but it seems to be a very gray area of how valid these assessments are, and might actually bring into question, again, for a later discussion, what about litigation? Could that result in this sort of scenario? What about information gained from our webinars? I really am grateful that a huge majority of you believe that you have found our sessions very useful, and we'd like to continue engaging with you 3 or 4 times a year as when that's possible. I'd like to say that tentatively the plans are that we will be back in December to talk about teaching and learning. I suppose a topic that concerns the majority of medical educators. I'm very conscious that assessment is considered to be a relatively niche area. But in January, we'd like to be able to bring to you again a discipline that still is rooted at the very heart of medicine, but perhaps in the sort of chase for specialization over the last 30 odd years has probably been seen as a less attractive discipline in some parts of the world, and that is primary care medicine. So primary care medicine or family medicine, we'd like to come with the Global Health Academy talking about how to deliver education in that field. Liz, would you like to add anything to that? And then, we'll close the session.
That's right. Yes, we'll set the date quite soon, at probably the end of January, beginning of February. And particularly, I think COVID has really reflected and shown up the absolute critical importance that family medicine is recognised as almost at the centre of healthcare for so many countries, and what that would look like, what that means. Certainly it's from WHO, it's a very strong message that's coming through. So very happy to talk through the in this next session, concepts around family medicine, learning around family medicine practice, with teaching and assessment and practice. Thank you.
So each one of you who's attended today, I really am grateful for your time, and especially to the distinguished speakers, each and every one of you, and the panel. I wish you very well. It is a festive time for many people across the world. I wish you the best. And of course, it's an uncertain time with COVID-19, and then of course, different weather events. So wish you all the very, very best of health. Keep safe. Goodbye. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to sign your attendance form, because that is what will enable us to get your certificate of attendance across. So goodbye, everyone. Ahmed, thank you very much. Neil and Professor Maglinau, really grateful.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ashwini, really grateful, really grateful. Thank you very much. Liz, Neil, Helen,